Yeah, hi everyone. This is a follow-up video to several videos I made about this Asus VivoTab Smart ME400C Windows 8 tablet PC. Please check my channel, and there's a full review of this and several follow-ups about other aspects. Now this is a follow-up again about 6 weeks or so later, and I've just got some more tips, some comments about the hardware, about Windows, about games, about performance, and so I'm just going to go over a few extra things because I've had some commenters asking about some aspects of this. Now, about the hardware, the hardware was one of the main reasons I bought this particular tablet PC, because I wanted the iPad style hardware experience, which is thin and light and sort of a nice small compact size with a long battery life, and yet I wanted a full Windows 8 desktop experience for emergencies only, not for general use, but only if I needed it, say when I'm traveling. Oops, sorry about hitting my camera. If I'm traveling and I need to get onto my desktop in order to do some work remotely, that's really what that's for. But otherwise, I really planned on using this in Windows 8 tablet mode rather than in desktop mode. Okay. Now, the hardware has been very good. Battery life is great. Screen is beautiful. What else? The camera is good, but of course I have my phone, so I don't use the camera, but it's there and it's good quality. The front camera is nice. The thinness is very nice. The weight is good. The finish is nice. The screen, I guess I'll just get on to some downsides. The screen is rather delicate. This is not Gorilla Glass. It's who knows what. But it's quite easy to scratch, and I managed to get a bit of a gouge along the screen right there, which I'm quite certain happened when I carried the phone at one point with the tablet together like that, and I think it was glass against glass, and a tiny piece of grit or something must have got stuck in between, and it slid across it. The phone isn't showing anything, but the tablet certainly is. So that was a bit disappointing, but doesn't matter. I bought this because it was cheap. That was one of the reasons, was because it was cheap-ish. There certainly isn't a cheaper one of its type. The others are similar priced or higher priced. Okay, so the screen is quite delicate. I'm not using a case, and I'm not using a screen protector because I'm not concerned. I don't want to get into a situation with this device where I'm trying to protect it. I just want to use it. It's a user. If I destroy it in the process over the next year, so be it. But it's a user. I'm not trying to keep it good. I was disappointed on the back here. I took all the stickers off, so I didn't want to carry around a bunch of stickers. I wanted to have the nice finish of this that it has, and just have it like that. And it's a very nice finish. But there's on the back of it, I noticed that around the badge, there's during manufacturing, they must have put something, to make that lettering, they must have put something on it and then rubbed around it. And I have this kind of splodge of something visible around the symbol. It's actually just cleaned up rather well with this rag, but it comes back after a bit. It's basically something has sort of ruined the surface around that ASUS badge in the manufacturing process. But it doesn't really matter. The material has been quite hard wearing. Surprisingly hard wearing for this kind of rubbery stuff. I thought it wouldn't last. I thought it would sort of start to scuff off very easily, but it hasn't. I've been relatively careful with it. I haven't dropped it like I've dropped my phone, but it has fallen off the bed, I have to say. And that was a bit of that freaked me out. I use it at night. I used to just use my phone, but now I use this, and I plug into it, listen to, whatever I want, news or some shows or whatever, podcasts or something when I go to bed, do some reading or whatever I want to do. And not every time, but often I have it plugged into the power for charging. Not every time, because I do let this thing run down. I'm quite happy to let it run down, just keep the battery in good order and charge it up again the next day. I'm doing that because in the instructions for the device it actually does say don't keep it on the charger. It's not made to work, stay on the charger all the time. And so I let it run down. Now I did have it plugged in one night and it fell off the bed. And this is, I guess, a problem with any device that has things plugged into the side and is itself sort of heavyish. I mean, it weighs a pound and a little bit or something. I mean, it's heavier than a smartphone. That's the point. If a smartphone falls off the bed onto its USB lead, it would probably be fine. But I've broken plenty of laptop power sockets in the past by having them fall off the bed. And you know, if this is plugged in like that, it falls onto the lead and basically breaks it, snaps it. I've had to solder power sockets back onto motherboards and laptops before. When this fell off, I was like, oh no, I've destroyed it. And the plug here certainly got a bad bend. That's bent straight again. I should say I actually got it as straight as I could again because I needed it. But it's still quite bent. And I've bought a new one now since. But the socket, I thought, oh no, I'm going to break it off the circuit board. And it was a bit touch and go now, because I didn't think I'd be able to get in here to fix it. Now, it did. What happened is the socket itself is obviously quite sturdily attached to the motherboard or whatever in there, the circuitry or the chassis or whatever. It's quite sturdily attached. But the way it's made is it's like that. So here's the plug, and it pushes in like that, and this is a thing that grips around the plug, and it's open at the bottom like that, so it just sort of touches. And so the plug was in there and went bent. How can I demonstrate that? It bent away like that, and so it splayed the socket. This went splayed like that, and the whole thing was very, very loose, which was very disappointing. So, and when it was loose, well, it was loose enough that the little tiny little plonks that hold the USB lead inside into the hole in the socket. There's these tiny little pieces. This camera focuses, you can see them. They wouldn't hold. They were no longer holding because the slot was just so big that it was just flopping around in there. So that sort of buggered it. However, I then sat there with a screwdriver and just carefully pushed it all back together. Yeah, there we go. That's perfect, actually. And I've even pushed it a little bit further. You can see how the bottom there is sort of standing upright here on this end, a little bit of metal, just to give it even more pressure and hold the plug in quite tightly. So that worked. I just did that through the sides here very carefully. Sort of just pushed and prodded and poked and fixed it again like that. And that seems fine. So now it holds. It's pretty much like new again. Yeah, that feels good. So, problem solved. But just be careful and don't drop your tablet off the bed. It's a bit delicate because you have this thing hanging out one side, you know, this power plug hanging out the one side, and of course I've got the headphones sticking out the other side up here, so there's something sticking out both sides, both of which are very delicate, so it's a bit delicate, not too crazy about that. The other thing about bed, and this refers to the hardware in general, is I have found that holding the device is a bit goofy. I had seen comments about this about how, you know, Microsoft chose this kind of format for the tablets, and obviously it's widescreen, and they're sort of designed that you use them this way, not like an iPad, which often is shown as being used this way. Well, these seem to be a little bit long. You know, they're just a bit of a funny shape. A bit long that way, a bit wide and short this way. Now, it comes into its own with this whole, you know, doing two things at once through these sort of two windows. That works, and it makes use of that extra space quite nicely. But otherwise, you know, it's not really needed. You know, when you launch a browser, most sites are built for 1024 screens, and that's where they stay unless you zoom in. They don't sort of fill in the space until you actually pinch zoom. YouTube, for example, typical site, and that's a left-aligned site that basically finishes there. That's stretched all the way out, but the site content finishes there, leaving this much space blank. And so if you fill it in like that, great, then it's fine. But initially, websites tend to be a bit small. They don't fill in the space. Whether or not this is good, this format, I don't know. I guess, as I'm saying, if you are compared with an iPad or that type of format, some of the Google tablets are like an iPad as well. The widescreen format, depending on how you've zoomed things, whether you've pinched or what you're doing, it's either wider, it's either nicer because it's wider, or it's wider with some blank space because you haven't zoomed it, or you've got it this way and it's nice because it's longer. You get more content down the page. You get more to read, but again, it does need to be set big enough so that you can see it. And that's quite nice. You get a lot of content down the page. So there are advantages and disadvantages to the formats. It doesn't really matter. What's nice is that movies these days, the smartphone things these days, this is the format they're all using, so nothing gets letterboxed. It's quite nice. You go to a YouTube video, watch it at full HD and so on. It's not letterboxed. It's made to be that size, so that's good. Whereas on an iPad or another, different format device, it gets letterboxed, or you have to crop it. Let me just put this back like that. However, there are also, so I don't think as far as the screen goes that it's a problem to have this kind of format. But in terms of holding the device, there is some validity in the point that if it's long like this, well, the longer it is, the more ungainly it's going to be to hold, especially if you're going to hold it just by the one side, there or there. And so if it was an inch shorter, well, it would be slightly less ungainly. Okay, that's definitely the case. But what I tend to do with this, what I'm finding I tend to want to do, is balance it in my hand when I'm holding it with one hand, because you don't hold it here on the left. You can, but you don't sit there in your chair like that. You want to hold it somewhere where it's balanced. And so you want to hold it in the middle, which means coming down to the bottom edge here and holding it. Well, inevitably, if you hold it in the middle so that your fingers are in the middle somewhere on the back, and your thumb is on the front, you inevitably start touching the, the start button, the Windows button. That's what happens. You keep hitting that, and that's irritating. So this is a problem with a capacitive button. I don't think that's a good idea. If I could switch that off, I would. Maybe there's a way to do it. I haven't looked, but I'm probably going to try and switch it off because that's irritating. It doesn't need to be on. Some of these devices have a hardware button there. That would probably be okay because you'd feel it and you'd just not push it. But being like this, you're always touching it. Even more irritating is that when it's off, if you touch it, it comes on. Why the hell they did that, I don't know. But I like a device that comes on with one button and one button only. I don't want it to come on just when I touch it somewhere. And I certainly don't want it to come on with other buttons like some phones do. I would like if this only came on with the hardware button up there. But you walk out, you pick it up, and as soon as you touch this, you turn it on. You keep picking it up, you're turning it on, you're walking around the street, and the thing is on all the time. Or you're having to watch it and make sure that you're on this side. Or even worse, what I found myself doing is I started carrying my phone there. I thought, oh, I'll put my phone, turn it off, you know, I'll put my phone there and carry them like that. And then promptly scratched my screen up here because obviously a tiny bit of grit or something got stuck in between the two, and scratched the, didn't scratch the Gorilla Glass of the phone, but it did scratch the crummy cheek glass of this screen. Okay, so that's not so great. The capacitive button, not good. The balance, you know, it would be okay, but because of that, it's a problem. You can, you know, one workaround that I use in bed quite often is you can, you know, you're doing something, you can flip it around this way, and it flips over. See, it goes in 4 directions. Great. So now the button isn't down the bottom. Okay, so in bed I can sit there and hold it with one hand like that, and that's okay. And I can do things or play Wordament or something like that, and that's okay. But then you go to some apps, quite a few of them surprisingly, like say that one. Watch what it does. Flips over. It starts off with the right way, and then it flips over. It only works this way. It only works in one direction. So that's a pain. And that leads into another whole area of inconsistencies about the app design, that they don't follow, even though Windows 8, the benefit of this Metro interface is it gives developers some design rules and a lot of ready-made code that they can use to do a lot of this stuff and you know, do it quite easily. They still do things differently. And although it's fine on your desktop computer, we're used to going to websites and seeing every website has its own user interface. Everyone has its own layout and styles and so on. And that's, you know, we're used to it on the desktop. But on these tablets like this, one of the benefits is standardizing things, getting a standardized user experience. And if it's a good one, which is what this Metro UI is, it is a good standardized user experience. It'd be nice if they all used it, but they don't. So some apps like this one, when you're reading, it's you scroll left and right. Okay, well that's just like, you know, this. You scroll left and right. Now that left-right scrolling, one thing about that, it works really well when you've got this thing like that, and you can go left and right. It's nice and easy. So you walk into a shop and you see one of these and go, oh, look, that's nice and easy. You know, swipe in, read the app, read the news. Really nice and easy to scroll left and right. That's nice. But if you're holding it like this with your thumbs to operate it, all of a sudden it's not so nice. The natural movement is to go up and down, which is exactly what it does on your smartphone. Things go up and down. They don't go left and right. When they do, it's a bit awkward. The left-right movement is awkward on a phone. It's the up-down that's nice and fast and easy. You know, that's nice movement. A little bit to the right, but then that's nice and easy to do. And so all the news apps and things on the phone, they scroll up and down. Here, things scroll left and right. And what I'm saying, when you're holding it with your thumbs like this, it doesn't work so well anymore. You can do it, but it's just a little bit goofier, a little bit more awkward to go left and right. I wouldn't notice if everything went left and right, but it's not the case, because just as many things go up and down. Of course, when you're reading web pages, everything goes up and down and nothing goes left and right. In these apps, can't remember, but most of them have left-right functionality. But of course, when you're scrolling through a story, bingo, bingo, this is loading the site. Of course, you're going up and down. You're not going left and right. This is another irritating inconsistency as well. I mean, I'm going to have a video full of inconsistencies here. This one drives me up the wall. So this one, the CNET app, it dropped me from the, you know, the CNET Metro, come back, the CNET Metro sort of interface here, this thing, and it dropped me into a story and it loads the browser. It loads this kind of browser control, but it's not IE. It is IE behind the scenes, but it's not giving me the IE interface. So there's no address bar. You know, this isn't IE in terms of giving me all the controls. It's just displaying this using the IE10 code. Now this one, and it's doing this in this truncated kind of this cut off, this letterboxed interface. See left and right, there's a bar, so it's giving me a 960 wide screen, missing out that space. I can zoom, but I don't gain that space. You know, I'd like to have that space if I'm going to zoom. If I'm allowed to zoom, give me the space. Now at least this app zooms, so I can come in here and I'm always doing this. I'm always double tapping on text, you know, to get that reflow thing. That thing where here, it's not reflow, but where it automatically resizes the page to suit the text you're looking at. I'll just open some random article on the phone. Okay, so there's some text there, and because it's small, I'll let that finish loading. Okay, so there's the text column. And typically you've got it with one hand like this, and you go, oh, that's too small. But it lets you double tap it, and it resizes it all. That particular content division, it resizes that to fit the column. You tap again, it goes back out again. That's an old functionality of phones that they've had for a long time. I keep doing that here. I keep wanting it to do that. You know, tap it, come on, zoom out. Doesn't. So it's always two hands. And so we're always trying to resize things up to the whatever make best use of the interface. I think it should just sort of fit things nicer by default. But you saw how that zoomed. It opened the page in the browser control thingy, and it let me zoom it. Well, that's one app. But then you get apps like this one, the Share app, which is one of these standard Windows. I keep saying Metro because I can't be bothered changing. So this is one of the standard included apps in Windows 8. Now, it's a nice app. This one. It's quite fun to use. But the thing you really want to see apart from the price is the news. So I come in here and I go, okay, give me a news. Very good to see that Nokia is giving some staff a pay increase. So this one here loads the story into the browser. The same browser thing with the edges cut off. It's exactly the same thing. But this doesn't let you zoom. No zooming. And the text is inevitably too small. No double tapping, nothing happens. You can't zoom it. That's irritating. You know, why would that app then not do that? So that's a pain in the butt. Other inconsistencies in this app. You want to read the news. There's actually a whole stack of news going down the page here. It just continues on down, but you can't get it. It's not there. You can if you spin it sideways. All of a sudden, oops, there it is. We do get some more news. So we get much more news if we turn the thing sideways. Well, that's weird. My desktop gives me much more news as well because I have a bigger screen. But it would be nice if this app would just give us access to the extra stories that you can't. There's other places here where you can go, but that's not the same thing. You want the filtered news and you want to be able to access it all. So there's a lot of inconsistencies like that, and I guess they are only inconsistencies because with this new standardized Metro interface, there's an opportunity to be more consistent, and I think that's not being fully met or fully made use of, that opportunity. Whereas I was saying on the desktop, with web browsers and websites, no one cares about it. Okay, so I was on hardware. I'll just have a quick reminder. Yeah, I've still got some things to talk about the hardware about. Now, the rest of the thing, like the case, like the finish, there's that funny patch again, it's back. Like the screen, the screen brightness was a bit of a pain. If you have it on auto, it's sort of never right, and then if you put it on manual, it's sort of right sometime, and then it's always wrong. You go to bed and you blast your eyes out with the brightness, and I don't know, it's all over the place. At least it's not hard to get at. You just go there, put your thumb on it, and you can go up or down. It's very jerky. There's only a few steps in between. I go very slow. I get multiple steps at the high level, but not at the low level. But in any case, it's once you got the brightness right, there's plenty of brightness and it looks nice. But just the auto brightness is a bit of a pain. Wireless, great. That works very well. Batteries, great. That works very well. I'll just have a mention about the tethering. I'm using the Lumia 920 for tethering, the Nokia, and there's a problem with that. The tethering works perfectly well, and all I have to do is go there, go to sharing, hit the go button, and it shares. So this is now, there it is. I don't know if it switches. Yes, it switches to that one because that's what it's being told to. So that's on, and that works. Not so great is when I'm using this, I take this into work, into places, and go to meetings and so on. And on my way in, I'll turn on tethering, and then put my, I'll come in with my phone on, but with tethering enabled, so that this is then online. I'm constantly having to be aware of the fact that that after a while it disconnects. Sometimes it seems to hold on forever until I get home and I can't get it off. Other times it's just gone pretty quick. I think I may need to play with the turn off times, the standby times and so on, to try and resolve that a little bit. This phone just tells you that after a number of minutes of not connecting, it will disable the sharing on this. And it's all fine and good that it does that, but the irritating thing is that you don't find out that it has disabled sharing until you then try and do something. Say you were in OneNote, or say you were on a site reading some docs or something, referring to something, and you go back and then you make a change, and then you sit there and you have to wait till it times out. You sit there going, okay, well, is it connected? And so now I constantly find myself going, am I connected there? I can't tell from that. Better go over here, better tap there, give it a few seconds, and then I can tell if I'm connected or not. And sometimes I might need to hit it, or then I know that this is off, and so I come back here and turn it back on. I don't know. It's a bit goofy, the tethering. It works, but I haven't quite resolved how best to use it. There's one related problem that is fairly significant because it has affected how I can use this. I would bring this in to the office, and I'd quite often just sit down, put the phone on the desk, and put the tablet on it. That would all be tethered up, right? And I'd just go like that, and that would give me a little bit of a lean on the keyboard for typing, which is really, really useful because I haven't got a case. When I do that, and then I look away for a few minutes, inevitably, once or twice or more, several times during an hour or two during meetings or other work I'm doing, I'd come back to this and it would be off, or it would be frozen. It would have reset itself, and then I'd have to sit here hitting the on button, holding it down, trying to get it to force a restart and stuff like that. It seems to be probably due to the RF transmitter in this, the data connection sitting close to whatever, the CPU or the circuit board or something in here. When they're close together for a while, at some point it screws up and the whole thing freezes. It doesn't have the problem if I keep them apart. So just a tip, if you're tethering, keep your phone away from your tablet. It's not good to have them together. One point, last time I was in, this thing had even blue screened. Nice new Windows 8 blue screen, but it's still a blue screen. And it was offering to restore the computer back to scratch without losing my documents, but totally resetting Windows. It was doing one of those fixes. And so that put a stop to that. Thankfully, I can always continue using OneNote on my phone. So any of my office work that I'm doing on here, I can do on my phone. So that sort of saved me. It was a bit embarrassing to have this thing crash and freeze on me like that. So I think that is a problem. Keep your phone away from your tablet. That's the lesson there. Other things to do with the tablet hardware. I'm still onto the hardware. Might have to do a separate video for the software. There's more about the hardware. I had many comments about this thing here, about the USB, which I thought was just for charging, because you plug it into your computer and the computer doesn't detect it as a device. So I assumed it was just for charging, like it is on a phone, right? But then people said, get an OTG, a USB OTG cable. And walked into a shop. I was going to get one off eBay or somewhere, and I just happened to walk into a shop, and there's a whole bin of these, hundreds of them sitting in a bin. USB OTG, on-the-go cable. So I bought that for heaps. Brought it home. It's just a nice little lead. USB on one side, micro USB on the other side. And if you plug it in, now of course you can only do this when you're not plugged in for charging, but thankfully the battery life is so good that you hardly ever have to be plugged in for charging. So if you do that, and put things in it, like say a USB key, which is what people typically want to do, it finds it instantly, hooks it up. So, works perfectly. I have also tried my mouse. That worked instantly and perfectly. Plonk, just this little Microsoft mouse. And then it also, during the Windows update, it downloaded the actual control panel for this particular mouse. So that works perfectly. I can use the little cursor around the screen now and do things, you know. So, good. That's great. Of course, there's only one. I haven't got a bunch of USB things, so a bunch of Bluetooth things. Otherwise, I'd use Bluetooth things. And I'm not really planning on using the mouse and the keyboard with this. But I was going to try out some games and things that needed a keyboard and needed a mouse. So I was sort of keen to try this out. So, being only one USB socket, yeah, you want to plug in a keyboard and a mouse. Maybe some other bits. I ended up getting one of these cheap 4-port USB hubs to plug into it as well. So we plug that in, okay, and now I get 4 USB thingies. So I can have the mouse in there, I can have a USB key in there, and what else can we plug in? I've got a keyboard sitting over here on the side, so I can plug that in as well. Let's just do that. And it works. Okay, so we've got 3 things plugged in at this point. And let's not stop there. We'll just move this up here out of the way. And let's pick up something even more fun. Okay. Let's bring a Midi keyboard in. This is a Novation controller, and this is powered, can power off mains, and it can also power off the USB. And so I was very interested to see if this was going to work, because one thing about USB, you know, everything has USB sockets, but they haven't always got the power. They haven't always got enough power in them to be able to power devices that use power, like hard drives and so on, portable hard drives. But this thing here, plug it into the USB. There we go. It lights up. Let's put that on top. What can I do here? Oops, I've turned it off. Let's try to. There we go. That's what I can do. Move that up to the screen. Put that there. There we go. A little Windows 8 music workstation here. So that's the key. Now it works. Power's on, all the LEDs, everything's on. So that actually works off the USB power, off this little hub. So this device is now powering 4 things, only one of which really needs any significant power, but it's reasonable. It does need power, this thing. It's not nothing. So that's pretty good. it works. Note that it does mean there's a lot of strain on your delicate little USB ports, so you'd have to be careful with that. Right, the hard thing was finding something that this works with. That copy of Reason that I had installed on this previously for testing, I haven't got that installed, and it took forever to transfer it, so couldn't be bothered with that. So I looked for some soft synths, and I couldn't find much. A lot of my old stuff just wouldn't work, but here, this was just a trial where I just downloaded some demo software. Oops, of course I launched that a few times. This is a piano. Piano's running demo mode, some keys are disabled, yeah, okay, whatever. How do I... magnification, this is interesting. I thought this was interesting. This app actually has, and if you've watched my video about scaling and the screen and apps and so on, you'll see the problems that these devices have with scaling. This has scaling built in it, tiny, small, normal, so it's got 50, 75, 90, 100, 125, 150%. So I can make it a bit bigger. And there we go. It scales itself up. And that's something we may start seeing in more apps. So that just dealt with its own scaling, and it looks quite decent. So the developers obviously made it so that it does scale, and it works when it looks proper when it scales. So that was interesting, I thought. In terms of the actual music, does it work? Audio MIDI setup. Listen to everything. Yeah, Windows Audio. This was working earlier. That might be because I launched it twice just then. So I'll just launch that quickly using the mouse. There we go. So that works. That works. You could, if you have a sequencer, if you have some apps for making music, it works. I don't know how useful that is compared with a, an Ultrabook with a proper sequencer on it. But it's certainly compact, and there's the potential to take your music with you and then edit it using a pen or using your fingers and so on the device. So it's interesting. Main point here is that the hardware, the whole MIDI thing, and the the hub works, USB stuff works. So I'll just get rid of that. And that there's power. There's enough power there to power a few devices. So that's quite cool. Just unplug that. Okay. Now I will stop this now because that's 40 minutes already. And I'm going to fire up a second round for tonight, in which I'll go on about some of the games because there have been some questions about performance of games and general performance in general. So I'm just going to go over that, and I'll talk a little bit more about the software. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for watching this one. Look in the video or watch the channel for the next one. Okay. Give me a like if you like it, which I get wrong. It's actually on that side, the likes, or subscribe. Yeah. Thanks. Catch you. Bye.